finally, after a couple weeks, he said, "Hey, I have good news for you. The team said it was a tough decision, but they chose your track." And
Wow.
I called my wife, and we got our bottle of wine. And I mean, that email was like the money shot. I was like,
Yeah.
I can do this. I'm part of this world now. That was so validating to get to say like, "Hey, they like it. You're gonna get the big payday, and
Yeah.
you're going to your music is going to be playing on terrestrial TV in Paris." I was like pretty
That's
stoked about that.
amazing.
It's the amount of money, the pay between the rights and the composer fee for this one is almost enough for me to pay the rent for my apartment for an entire year.
Yeah.
that
So there
that
you
should
go.
that should give some perspective. I've been
Yeah.
like, it got me very excited.
Hey folks, it's Tommy Z back with you again. This is lesson 3 where we're actually going to dive in to a session. And I figured what better way to do this than to invite one of our masterclass students that recently graduated and actually got his first paying gig. More so than any of the sounds that you hear in this video today, what's more important than that is all of the lessons that Lewis will share. All of the lessons that got him to a place where he got this gig, very important, and very specific stuff that he did in order to create the music for this particular campaign. He'll show you his processes, his plugins. We talk about mindset. We talk about overcoming difficulties, all the way to a very big unexpected payday for Lewis, and that's a testament to his perseverance. So I really want you to pay attention to the lessons contained within this module. Grab a journal, write these lessons down. Feel free to speed this up, but don't skip. You can't skip your way to success. If you have questions, put your comments below and enjoy the video. Hey folks, it's Tommy Z back again, and today we are inside of the DAW with who better than one of our masterclass students who went through our program and went out there and hustled and finally got a big paying gig. And like I promised, instead of looking at my own session, I thought it'd be much better to look at one of our student sessions for a real commercial gig in the real world. And so here we are with Lewis Knudsen, who you might be already familiar with from our previous video on his success story. And today we're going to talk about craft, get into the craft. How you doing, Lewis?
I'm doing well, Tommy. Thank you for doing this. This is fun.
Yeah, man, this is going to be great fun. We spent like an hour trying to figure out how to route
Yeah.
the audio from Cubase on a PC through a Zoom call, which we realized is a problem for a lot of folks.
Yeah, word to the wise. Yeah, look into that.
By the way, we're using Audio Movers right now. Just their free trial, and it's working so far. We're able to route the audio. It's working pretty well. So that's cool. So Lewis, you're working in Cubase, I see.
I am. Yeah, I have been for a while, and this is just what I'm used to. So been a Cubase user for like 10 years, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, and I know a few people that actually work in Cubase, so in the world of commercials. So first of all, for the people who didn't watch the success story, and we didn't actually talk that much about it, but tell us what it took to get this job. Like, the big picture.
Yeah.
What did it take to get this job?
Well, I will say, since we're in the box today and we're kind of getting into the nitty gritty of this stuff, I will say, like I said when we last talked, it took years of intensive research on basically just home recording and engineering. I have been sending my music to music houses for a long time, to be honest, and for years I just never got replies. And now I listen back to my stuff. I'm like, oh, I see why they didn't reply, because it didn't sound good. And I've been very persistent in growing as just trying to make things sound absolutely as best as they can, as good as they can, doing my best work. Just the tiny little things I've realized, as I've been contacting these producers that, and yourself included, that producers have even like commercial producers. I'm not talking about someone who's like, working on the latest Justin Bieber album, but like just people that work on commercials have amazing ears. Like they can hear reverb, they can hear compression, they can hear when 2.5 kilohertz is a little too low or a little too high in the mix. And it's really grown my respect for the people that work in this industry, because like my first couple chances that I had at demos that didn't go through, the producers, thankfully in a nice way, were like, hey, did you really listen to the reference? Like, I noticed the piano didn't really sound as like it was in the same kind of room as the reference track that we sent you. And so I've really spent a long time and just track after track of really trying to just train my ears and be able to tell what sounds good. And yeah, so, and we're going to get into that, but I would say that that's the first thing that even got me close to this world, is putting in all the work to just make a track that sounds like it could go on the radio, and
Yeah.
wouldn't need any help along with that. But
That's
then
what we always talk about, the fully polished demo.
yeah, and for me, maybe that comes naturally to some people, but for me it definitely did not. I've worked for years to just get my mixes sounding like passable in this
Yeah.
field, and then
Yeah.
just trying to, but then of course the other thing is getting someone to listen, and so that's where the master class comes in. um
Yeah, because
Learning
the
how to
thing is, like, there are two, to give people context who are listening. You're saying it took you years. You only took the master class this year.
yeah,
And then after that, it took you months to actually get your first paying project. But
right,
you're saying in actuality, the master class is almost like a culmination after
C-
years of getting yourself
completely.
to a point where you could actually make the knowledge inside of the master class useful at all to you.
Completely. That is what I've said time and time again. And I would say I would caution anyone who's looking at the master class as kind of like being a fix-all for their mixes, because it's going to give you a lot of clues and a lot of hints. But if you're not making radio ready, really really good sounding stuff right now, the master class, it's not going to just solve all your problems overnight. At the same time, I will say you do enough in-depth stuff like this in the masterclass where you really get a lot of good like clues and stuff. But again, personally for me, it's a lot of tedious, meticulous work on the snare, work on the kick, work on
Yeah.
the vocals, bust the drums, and learn how to do all this stuff. So it's almost like a reflex. And then when you jump into the master class, it's like, okay, now I'm making stuff that sounds good. I need to learn how to get people to listen to it, and that's a whole different art.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to say first of all is it's a good observation to say that people on the inside of our industry have great ears. Like,
Mm.
you think jingles, you think advertising. I'm the musician here. But what you don't
Right.
realize is a lot of times you're talking to someone who's a through and through musician, or
Exactly.
they are a through and through sound engineer.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of senior music producers in this business have decades of experience in
And
producing.
that's why they're doing that.
Yeah, and that's why they're, and so, like, don't be surprised if they know more than you.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
some people have this wrong perception of advertising is like, oh, it's jingle, it's like stock music. And it's like, well, that's not the kind of campaigns we are talking about. We're talking about the ones where they are going out of their way to craft something that
Mm.
sounds like a real authentic track.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so that's the first thing I wanted to say. Before we dive into the session, I want to ask you, what are some of the best resources that you have found to improve your music production and your mixing skills?
Um, I think there's YouTube.
Yeah, no, but
it's
that's what I'm
it's
looking for.
it's
Just give us, a
it's
lot of
all
people,
there.
who are
It's
watching
all
this mini
yeah.
class, a lot of them want free resources. It's
No,
all there,
it's
but like, can you think of things that I don't want to put you on a spot, but can you think of channels or things that stood out, or was it
Yeah,
just like
totally,
how to
totally.
do this? Okay.
No, Musician on a Mission has a lot of great resources.
Hello to Rob
Gosh,
Mazes. Big shout out to you.
yes, exactly. And I've learned so much good stuff from his channel. It's really incredible. Honestly, yeah. Pensado's Place is a great resource, and that's kind of cool because you really get they interview some of the top people in really in the more to the artist side of things, but you get to because commercial music is they want everything is trying to be hip and it's trying to be cutting edge, and so when they're interviewing the guy that just did the Billie Eilish album, you're able to kind of get a little insight into they get some really big names that they interview. And then Dave Pensado, he's a very well-known
Yeah,
mixing
legend.
engineer, and at the beginning of every interview he does a little, I forget what they call it, into the layer, I think, and he talks about his new favorite plugin.
Yeah,
um, let's see. For me as a Cubase user, and I think probably anyone who uses different DAWs can relate to this, is like it's definitely more enjoyable to watch someone working in your DAW because you can literally replicate every process that they do. So my favorite Cubase guy is, well, I guess I have two. Chris Salim, Chris Selim. He's a great Cubase guy that just has and Cubase 11 just came out, so everybody's really excited about that. I
yeah,
haven't quite pulled the trigger on it yet, but then my other favorite guy is a guy named Dom Sagalis, and he's actually again, he's an incredible musician. I mean, you watch this guy play keys, and it's just like, wow, like he could have been a professional musician in multiple ways, but he's making really great um, tutorial videos for specifically for Cubase users, but he will review
yeah,
third party plugins, and he talks about how to do, he talks about how to do, like, how to use stock plugins, actually, how to really do. I think sometimes as producers we get we get we get gear acquisition syndrome, except not with guitars but with plugins, with new versions of this and that,
yeah,
with new microphones. And the truth is you don't really need that much other than a good energetic uh, you know track to sell yourself. You don't need as much as you think you do. I
yeah,
really believe that. And so
yeah.
it's cool to see someone like Dom Sagalis making videos that show you how to use what you already have rather than trying to sell some $300 plugin.
Yeah, yeah, which
Yeah.
is cool. Okay. Um,
And I will also say too, Slate Digital, I use, and it is a $15 a month subscription, but they've actually got a lot of resources on for paid users on their website. And one of the most useful things has been their ear training thing for me. It'll go through a track and it'll solo, only the 1K band, and then it quizzes you. It says which band has been soloed. Is it 500 hertz? Is it 1K? Is it 2K? Is it 3K? And you make mistakes. You're like, oh, I thought my ear was better than that. And through that whole and there are other websites too that offer that ear training. But yeah, ear training, I mean, it's a lot of work, and it seems really boring to do. It's not very sexy to sit around and practice hearing 2,000 hertz or 50 hertz. But when you get in the box and you're just doing all these things again reflexively, you're not having to think about it,
yeah.
then you're getting the kick drum right where it needs to be. You're getting the vocals right where they need to be. And so ear
Yeah.
training is very valuable. And I found that on the Slate digital website.
So Slate Digital, also check it out. And um, you mentioned that when you finished the master class and you got out there, you got a couple of opportunities early on from music production companies, and they sent you a project, you offered to demo, and then they wrote you back with, did you listen to the reference? So tell me about some of those, yeah, what you might call mistakes or like learning lessons. uh what was that all about? Like, what happened there and what did it teach you?
um, yeah, they sent me a reference track for this Coca-Cola ad. I was, this is my first. I get two, briefs in the same weekend, and one of them is from Coke, and I was elated to even be called. So that was a testimony to the masterclass, the website, the reel, and it's like, okay, this stuff is working. So someone's giving me a real job. They sent me a reference track from the band called the National, and it's got this real gritty piano. And I really, and I was pretty rushed that weekend, and so the first demo I sent, I just kind of like, I was overly confident. I'll admit it. I was like, I got this. Like, I'm gonna nail it. And confidence is good, but it's my first, basically my first demo that I'm sending. And so nicely enough, the producer emails me back, and he's like, he's like, hey, the piano in the reference sounds a lot more like roomy reverb, and you don't really have much of that on the piano. And so it was humbling, and it was a good experience because it made me take the reference track a lot more seriously. And now it's almost unheard of for me to do anything without a reference track, because I
Yep.
mean, it's just, you're setting yourself up to win. It's a little extra time that goes a very, very long way. And in this project here, I mean, we can, if you want, we can listen to it. But they sent me a reference, and I dug in, But okay, but this is September we're talking about. Back in June, I just had that one experience that really taught me, like, okay, when someone sends you a reference, dig into it, listen to the snare, listen to the piano, think about the reverb, think about where, and literally AB. I mean, and I have from Plugin Alliance, also a subscriber to them, and they have this referencing plugin called Metric AB, and it allows you to listen with no volume changes. That allows you to listen to your track and then the reference track simultaneously, just A B. You can click
Yeah.
back and forth, and it's super useful because when you're trying to hone in on that snare, going out of your DAW and then listening to something in Windows Media Player and then coming back, that's just a waste of time. So
Yeah.
being able to go back and forth between, to reference the vocal, to reference the piano, is really useful. And so that experience with the Coke ad really taught me to take the reference really, really seriously,
Yeah. And
and do my yeah.
I want to say a couple of things about this. The reference tracks, because this is a lesson about craft. So I really want you to get full value as far as talking shop. So first of all, for those of you who don't know, a reference track is something that you will often get from a music production company when you're working with them to give you an example of what the agency wants. And sometimes this example is like, we literally want that. And sometimes it's more of a general kind of like, here is where we want to end up with feeling and things like this. The most important thing I want to say to you guys right now is be careful that you don't rip reference tracks, as in you don't copy them, because there's all sorts of lawsuits going on right now. The more famous the band is, the more people are listening for tracks that sound exactly like the signature of that band, and people are getting in trouble for it. So the art of writing original songs that are based on the reference is the art of being able to lift the feeling of that reference and to convey the same aura, the same um, DNA without obviously copying anything that's so specific to that song, as far as sound, as far as feeling, and obviously as far as like chord progressions and notes. So the first thing we always say is like, never copy the melody. Try to do it in a different key. Don't have the same timing on the chords and make the chords different. But when, for instance, the producer tells Lewis, hey, that piano sound, it's like it was different in the reference. That's a clue for you to understand the fact that certain bands and certain tracks have a certain aura to them, a certain feeling. And the way they process the snare drum, the way they process a piano creates a certain feeling. And so you might think, oh, I'm just going to do similar chords with a piano and that's enough. But then you find out suddenly that, no, you don't understand. The way they process the piano gave the secret sauce to the entire feeling of that song. You know what I mean? So that's
Right.
something that I wanted to point out to you guys. Like, why did he mention the reverb type on the piano?
Yeah.
That just gives you a clue to the fact that in combination, all of those things, the type of reverb on the piano, the kind of saturation on the snare drum, the kind of limiter on the overall mix, Is it pumping? Is it not pumping? Is it soft? Is it intense? All of those things are things that you really have to take to heart from the reference. You have to learn how to study the reference like an engineer who's reverse engineering everything and understanding like what is it about this reference that they like and how can
Yeah.
I emulate it? Yeah.
In fact, that was the first email the producer sent me on this project, this that we're looking at, was what was how much in love. See, the reason I got hired to do this was because the train company, um, amidst um, negotiations and stuff, it got a little too expensive for them to use the track that they were using. And so that shows you how married they were to this track. It's by a band called Electric Guest, a really fun sounding, kind of vintagey song with a male singer, male vocalist.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, this had already been used for like a couple of years in their ads. So they really wanted that sound. But the producer told me right away, he's like, we don't want to get sued. So I knew right off the bat, like, get
Yes.
close, not too close.
Yes. Yes, definitely. And I'll tell you guys that in my field, we will often hire a musicologist. A big shout out to Mr. Peter Oxendale, the world famous musicologist based out of England, who has helped me time and time again when we dealt with high pressure, big budgets, certain reference track that we wanted to emulate. Um, and Peter, who's been on either side of litigation. So he's been on the attacking side and on the defending side. He really is the master at understanding how to help us, music production companies, to create things that express the feeling but do not infringe copyright.
Yeah.
So that's a big factor in our work, most definitely. Okay,
Yeah.
so I wonder, should we listen to the reference track? Do you have it handy somewhere?
I can bring it up here real quick for you. Let's see. Are you seeing my Google screen right
Or you
now?
know what? Let's not bother. Lewis, let's not
Okay,
bother.
cool.
You told
Yeah,
me what the
we
track
can put it
was.
in
Who
we can put it
cares?
in the
Like,
link. Yeah.
yeah, we
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
put it in the link. I want to hear your work. So tell me, just before we dive in here, what did you find to be the difference between writing songs? And that's another thing that I wanted to add, by the way, is that you got ready not just by watching YouTube videos, not just by being a member of Slate Digital, not just by watching all these things, but you have a really prolific practice routine. Like you keep putting out songs every single day, right? So I just wanted to highlight that as a learning lesson for all of you guys out there who keep emailing me and asking me and telling me about how you're practicing something, but you're not actually finishing songs.
Mm,
Like you can't learn to cook unless you actually serve somebody a dish and you feed them. So talk
yeah.
to me really briefly about your the essence of your craft improvement. Like what does it look like?
Yeah. It's a lot of trial and error. And I think in 2013 and then 2018, both of those years, and I'm all about goals. Goals are huge. And I know is especially when you're self-employed. I mean, no one else is going to make you do it, something. You have to do it yourself. And so both of those years, I set a goal for myself on January 1st. I said, I'm going to write, record, and release a new track every single week. And I did it. In 2013, I didn't quite reach my goal, but in 2018, I did 52 songs, and you can see them all on Spotify. They're all there, and like they're obviously not all great songs, but they're finished. And each and every one of those songs, I would send them to my friends, to producer friends, to other songwriter friends, and I would say, "What do you think of this? What do you think?" I was just like a sucker for any feedback I could get from anyone who I knew was better than me, who was even one step ahead of me with production and with
52
songwriting.
finished songs.
Dude, it was
So
stressful. And I
yeah,
was
it's stressful,
touring too.
but
But
here's the law. Here's the law of numbers. Of course, they're not all going to be good, but there's some good stuff there, isn't there?
yeah. Oh
Those
yeah, for
52
sure.
tracks.
Some
Yeah.
of my best work was done. And it's always funny. Some of the best songs you write, you don't even know, you know, you don't even know what they're going to be. I could, I know we're not talking about songwriting here, so I'm not going to get into it, but I've had some really neat success stories with songs that I just wrote off the cuff, like just thinking like, and it wasn't, like, oh, something terrible happened necessarily, or my girlfriend just broke up with me, because, like, there's so many things to write about,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
there's so much beauty in the world to reflect in songwriting. And so
right.
I cannot say enough about just being productive at all costs.
Yeah, and
And
challenge
you
yourself to actually finish something. And this is
do
why
make something, yeah,
in
by
the
the end of the
previous
week, by the end of
lesson,
the month. Yeah.
we talked about the numbers, right? 1,
Mhm.
5, 20, 240. What do those numbers mean? One hook a day, one commercial scored a day means 5 a week, means 20 a month, means 240 a year.
Yeah.
Like when you do anything religiously, you will have results. There's no
Yeah.
there's no other way around it. Like there is no way that you will have 240 crappy songs at the end of the year.
Right.
You will have
Yeah.
an album or two or three worth of material if you only teach yourself through practice to finish. So I wanted to bring this up, folks, because yeah, we're going to show you the session. We're going to tell you how Lewis wrote stuff, but I'm trying to help you to get there with the foundational things, the most important things that nobody ever talks about because we're too busy watching the top 3 mixing tips on YouTube.
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes it's not the mixing tips that you're lacking, it's finishing discipline, like having structure, challenging yourself to actually finish stuff, which in the long run will be way more valuable than 3 top tips on mixing on YouTube. Why? Because you will learn how to mix by serving your higher goal, which is to finish a song every week. Because at some
Absolutely.
point you'll be like, I'm tired of this stuff sounding crap. By the 7th week, I want my 7th song to improve the drums. By 8th week, I want to improve my vocal recording. By the 9th week, I want to record my mastering. Whatever. You get the point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to encourage people, I've not like I'm some famous person, but I've written and released over 200 songs, and still, just the other day, I was trying to, I had to like, give myself a pep talk to start a track, because I wasn't into it. I was like, oh, this sucks. It's sometimes it just like, there's different seasons of motivation and everything, but I was like, I just had to be like, stop being afraid, stop being lazy, and start a track, man. Like, this is all my inner dialogue, but
Yeah,
that's
that's
me
true.
having written songs for 15 plus years and just writing so much stuff. And it's like, it doesn't get easier to really force
Yeah.
yourself to do stuff sometimes, but the work gets better. And that's the payoff. When you finish a
That's
track,
right.
you're like, this is the best track I've ever done.
Well,
And I wouldn't have gotten there unless done 200 before it.
this round circle of Hollywood composers, which you can Google on YouTube, where you have like Danny Elfman, Hans Zimmer, all these film Hollywood composers sitting around talking candidly about their struggles and about their careers. And it's incredible to hear a guy like Danny Elfman go, I've done like 200 films, and every time I get a project and I open a session, I feel like I forgot how to do this.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
it's the same feeling for these pros. If you think about it, Danny Elfman feels no different than you do, but he
Mm,
feels no different at a different scale,
right.
which means he has a body of work behind him and he already has a certain capacity and a certain confidence, but his aspiration is also much, much higher.
Right.
So every project is killer pressure for him to maintain the quality of the standard that he's known for,
Yeah, yeah.
not just to satisfy his client, but also to satisfy his own inner critic.
Mhm.
So you're never immune um, from that feeling. And if you are, then I think you're maybe fooling yourself or lying to yourself. Like if you think it's always going to be easy, and but that's where that mindset takes over. Okay, but let's focus on the technical stuff because we've already had a few lessons on the mindset and things like this. So maybe we play this thing once through, take a listen to it, and then we'll dissect the track a little bit. What do you think?
Let's do it.
All right, let's check it
All
out.
right, here we go.
Yeah, every time I'm walking
Okay, so let me ask you, the first thing is we can get the basic nature of the track. It's kind of fun, it's upbeat, it's got a really colorful and friendly and charming vibe.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, where do you start with a track like this? So you got this brief, they gave you a reference, which is a similar track. Where did you start? Do you start in the computer? Do you start on the piano? Where, like, how, what's the first thing you do?
Um, I start. I just started singing. It was this just so people can check it out. It's a band called Electric Guest, and the track name is "This Head I Hold." And it really reminded me, I'm kind of a big like Amy Winehouse fan. I really like her music, and I like that how she kind of channeled that Motown singer and the jazz singer vibe. I really like that kind of music anyway, and then the production obviously fits too. Well, this song is almost like it kind of remind as far as the feel of the song goes. It reminds me of that Amy Winehouse is a Rehab song. No, 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 do. It's kind of got that double snare feel, whatever you call that, rock
Yeah,
or old school rock and roll song
yeah.
feel, except with a male vocal. And so I just started singing into my phone. And I was actually going to play you a voice memo, but I don't think it's going to work for our audio routing today. But it sounded bad. It's just like me kind of na
Well,
na na
man,
na na na. Na.
if you have it, maybe you put it up against the mic from your phone.
It's on my. I think it's only
Yeah,
on the
don't worry about it.
computer.
Don't worry about
Yeah.
it. We all know about, we laughed about these voice notes that we do to ourselves.
Right.
But
Right.
essentially, the first thing you did is like you listen to the reference and then you try to sing your own feel of a similar kind of thing, right?
Yeah, and just without getting too, it's you don't want to listen to the reference too many times because you don't, like you said before, you don't want to copy
Yeah.
anything, but at the same time, you want to get close. So I just listened to, I took that advice. I remember Sean, when you interviewed Sean, he talked about the importance of that, and so I kind of just I took that advice from the master class. I put it into practice, and I oh, you know what? I actually did find the track here. Let's see if we can hear
We saw you searching for it because you're sharing your
that. Okay.
screen. So we saw.
Um, wait, no, that's not the right
That's not it.
thing at all.
Okay.
That's a vocal lesson I had with a friend of mine a long time ago.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
um, let's see, import audio file. Oh, here it is. Okay.
So okay, so
Yeah,
you're
this is
listening to the track and then you're just recording on your
and,
phone.
and this is
Spontaneous.
what I do.
Every time I'm walking down the street alone, you know I'm right where you go. Every time I take a vacation on my own, you know.
Okay, I won't torture anyone, but yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I made the simple drum, with the BPM that they wanted, and I just started kind of riffing, and obviously, most of what you're hearing in there did not end up in the final project, but
But that was your skeleton.
that's how it started. Yeah, that's the skeleton. Yep.
And did you write the lyrics first, or did you kind of sing gibberish and then figure out the words?
I think I did write the lyrics first. I really enjoyed watching the edit that they sent me, and I thought that I wanted the words to be about going and
Okay.
togetherness. So go with you, and you're watching this little. 'Cause the whole concept is that it's like combining the idea of pinball with the idea of taking a train, and it's
That's
just
right.
this fun thing that's going all over Paris.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did write the words first, and then I started saying "go with you," into my phone, and then things started, pretty quickly
Yeah.
taking shape. Yeah.
Yeah. And is that normally how you come up with songs? Like you basically will get kind of an idea in your head and you put it on your phone first and then you polish it up and record it properly into Cubase?
I yeah, I think so. I really like collecting a ton of different voice memos and not only for lyrics but just for like, if I'm playing guitar and I find a cool chord progression, I like to record it. And then I'm pretty OCD about like naming all the files and keeping them on my desktop in like
Yeah.
certain file folders, and I like to that. That's fun for me, and it makes the process of combining different ideas really fun too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Cool. And tell me what, now that you've had the exposure to writing music for different commercials, and then you've had the experience of writing hundreds of tracks on your own, what is the primary difference between writing a song and then writing a song for a commercial?
There's a deadline with a commercial. And I've noticed that I'm pretty proud of the work I do when there's like a really hard deadline, because there's no second guessing. You work really hard, but you kind of have this visceral necessity of just getting it done and doing your best, and then letting the little bird go and fly away.
Yeah. And then also maybe talk about the limit, not the limitation, but maybe the kind of the parameter of having to work to picture. So in this case, did they say to you, okay, we like this reference track, we especially need to emphasize this part of the film, or we need the song to do this when this happens in the film?
Yep, and I'll show you that right here. This was the moment right here, right at the beginning. This is only a couple seconds into the thing, into the spot. But this, so again, with the idea of
Pinball.
pinball, this train is getting catapulted by this plunger, I think it's called, and they wanted the beat to start right there. And so that's why when I was singing in my little voice memo, I was doing this vocal thing, or kind of like a rise. I was going, eh, because I wanted
Mm,
there to be like a musical idea of pulling back the thing and then boom, letting it go.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
this is the boom moment. This was as far as timing goes, I had a lot of freedom, to be honest, as far as hits and stuff like that. But this was the thing they really were intent on, the beat starting
Okay. So
right when the
they didn't restrict you with like you have to hit this and this and this and this. They just wanted an overall sunny, happy, bouncy track.
they did.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I this is at this point I still haven't had anything go final, and so I really I wanted to impress them, and so I actually added some tom. This ball is like bouncing in these little inner tubes right here, and so I did boom 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 when the ball is bouncing through those.
Let's
Also
hear that.
the ball. What's that?
Let's hear that.
Yeah, yeah. So it's right there again because of the video stuff. It's going to be hard to compare, but right here the ball comes out of a little kind of a track thing. It kind of
Yeah.
gets catapulted out of this track.
Yeah. We
There,
see.
right. So you hear that little horn thing that, like,
Yeah.
right as the ball comes out, I was like, bap. And they didn't tell me to do that. I just had fun, trying to do. Oh, also a little like a synthesizer here when the waves are going up. It's like, zzz.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I voluntarily did stuff like that.
Just to mark
Ev-
the
yeah,
moment.
just because I wanted to win.
Yeah, yeah. And well, it's about like really once you have the natural sounding track that expresses a certain emotion and you find that you can naturally and musically do something on the track that actually correlates the picture, then
Right.
that's great. You don't want to overdo like these things so that you don't butcher the kind of natural vibe of the track, just because you want
Right.
to mark everything. But I hear here it's very tasteful. So, okay, so you started with a vocal line on your phone,
Yep.
and then you knew you had a kind of a skeleton. So then, what did you do next? You obviously
The,
brought the film into here into Cubase
Yep, yep. I
and then your
loaded the
tempo.
track into Cubase, and yeah, I started at I started. I thought I had matched the tempo exactly from the reference track, and I don't know if I had made a mistake or if they just decided they wanted more. But you can see in the bottom right here, I ended up at 166 beats per minute, which obviously is pretty fast,
Yeah,
and I think I had started at 150 or 155. So and again, in the masterclass you say this is like more, faster, energy, build, like those, it's.
yeah,
And so I wasn't surprised when they said, can you make it faster? I was like, of course I can. And that's the cool thing about pretty much any DAW nowadays, is that you can even take analog, vocals or
yeah.
guitar or whatever, and you can,
Audio.
without losing any quality, you can make it faster. That's just such a huge time saver. I remember working in the box when that was not the case, and so I'm very appreciative of that feature. So yeah, I took the whole track, I made it 10 or 15 beats per minute faster, and then it really had this like it matched the picture a lot better because you've got all this movement, you've got fast, you've got this little pinball going everywhere, and it really worked well. So yeah, that was a good call for the producer to have me bump up the
The
energy
tempo.
of it.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Yep.
what sequence did you record in? Like, how did you lay down the tracks? What do you start with, and then what's after that?
Um, I did the drums first,
Okay.
and the piano. If you listen to the track, the piano is very key here. It's dun, 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 dun,
Yep.
dun, dun, dun. And if you listen to the reference track, you'll definitely pick up on that. It's basically how it starts, and so I knew that was important to them. But I put my own spin on it and kind of
Yeah.
and really in the whole mix it almost gets not lost, but it's not as much of a part of the, there's a lot more going
Right.
on here because this is a commercial piece. And originally the all this I will say, as far as mixing techniques, you've noticed I'm pretty meticulous with the color coding. I've got drums red,
Yep.
vocals are purple, basses, and so all this pink stuff and purple stuff here, that originally was not in the track. I added that later because they said they wanted synth elements. That there's no synths in the original track, in the reference track, but they wanted this to be bigger. They wanted it to pop. They wanted there to be more energy, and so those things came later. None of that was here when I first sent my first
Okay.
demo.
So you started
Uh,
with drums. Let's go one by one and just what
yeah,
did you use for drums? What are your tools for
I
drums?
believe I used Slate, and I just bought these this summer, but I heard really good things about them, and there was a deal anyway. These there's all sorts of different like kits, kit
Yeah,
samples.
kids. Yeah.
This one I found was really old sounding. That was one thing when I was doing my just leaning my ear in, really trying to find exactly what stuff sounded like. Here's the kick.
Yeah.
So that kick is in a room. That's an old kick in an old room, and it sounds hairy and it sounds gritty and it sounds great.
Just play the whole kit.
Oh, sure.
Might as well.
Let's see. We got time. Let's see. Well, here we just got a crash. So
Yeah.
that's the spine of it. I've got some random stuff here and there, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
percussively,
Cool.
and it doesn't look that way, but it's really pretty simple. It's doing do 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 do.
Yep.
I put I put a lot of, in fact, you'll see, yeah, this little radiator from Sound Toys, I got a good deal on it, this past summer, and it adds even more um, grit. In fact, listen to the snare by itself. Listen how old it sounds. Like that's a beat up snare.
Yeah.
But I was,
That's great.
again, learning my lesson from the Coca-Cola project. I was like, I want this snare to sound really, really close to
Yeah.
what they can't sue me for that. They'll sue me if I copy the
No,
melody, but
that's
no,
right.
that's one thing you want to copy exactly. And so I
Yeah.
really, and that's also pretty, yeah, a lot of these percussion samples are from this Steven Slate kit that just sounds really good. And the thing also that you'll that that's really good, that you need to be mindful of when especially with percussion. It's really easy to get it too robotic, to kind of like dehumanize percussion, because it's so easy to quantize things
Quantize.
nowadays.
Yep.
And just listen to this kind of snare roll here. Now you'll hear almost every sample sounds different. It sounds like someone's actually in a room just
Yeah.
hitting that snare. It's not like it's not like some kind of machine gun thing.
Yeah.
And obviously you'll see here, as I zoom in on my not automation, but like my MIDI,
Yeah. Your MIDI roll. Yeah.
like the velocity, every it's
Is
all
different. Yeah.
it's like a roller coaster. And that's you definitely want to work hard to
Yeah.
even down to that level, to make things sound really real. You do not want it to sound like, on a track like this, you don't want it to sound quantized or robotic or anything
No,
like
I
that.
think the beauty of this track is that it sounds like a real track, and you don't really know when it's from. Is it a vintage
Yep.
track? It kind of
Yeah,
sounds new, but we don't know. And you hear that flavor a lot in all these commercial tracks in the last decade.
that's
They
definitely
have
what
that
they wanted.
vintage flavor, which is beautiful. And things like snare rolls, those are the things that really provide variety and life to the track. Like,
Hmm.
otherwise, you just have a grid and you just keep pasting your patterns forward. But these little things like rolls and little, transitions and fills, those are the things that really kind of keep the listener tuned in, because
Yeah.
what hypnotizes them is the pattern. But
Yep.
it's very easy to kind of get bored with a pattern. So these are like pattern interrupts, these snare fills and these rolls that are really valuable. Okay, so you lay down the drums. What are you putting your drums through as far as mix? Is what's on your mix bus here? Like, you put
Oh,
something on the
good.
drum mix
Yeah,
bus?
good question. I do not have a drum bus here, but I did want to make a point of talking about top-down mixing because here, right here on the left is my stereo bus,
Yep.
and so I'm definitely a fan of starting with having your favorite. Basically, if there's a plugin that sounds good on every single track, save yourself some time and CPU and put it on the
A
man
return track.
the two bus. So
Yeah.
right here, I've got the Slate Infinity EQ, which is a mid-side EQ, a little similar to Pro 2, but it doesn't have a dynamic EQ with. But I do this to help my mono signal really sound good on its own, which maybe we can talk about a little later. Let me just move on through these.
Yep.
This is an Acoustica emulation of a Pultec EQ, and man, I mean, and Waves has a version of this too. And as far as I know, they all sound great. But you take 100 hertz here and you boost it a few decibels, and you just get this rich low end that just it's such a time saver. I mean, it makes the bass guitar sound better, it makes the vocals sound better, it makes the kick drum sound better. It's like
Yeah.
slap it on there. And also because this is a vintage sounding track, I've got 4K here. That's where the frequency is, and I'm boosting that a few decibels too to get because in those older tracks you didn't have a lot of sparkliness in the 12, 16K area because
No,
tape wouldn't do that. But
that's
in
right.
the 4K area, you had that resonance there. So I
Yes.
boosted that a little bit too to give it that vintage sound. I've got the Slate VVC. This is just it just sweetens it up. It glues everything together.
Yeah.
I love this plugin from
Oh, yeah. I've heard
the
about
Oxford
this.
inflator. It
Actually, by
adds.
the way, folks, if you're listening, they have a huge sale right now. I think you
Oh,
can get the
I wish
inflator
I
for,
would have waited till now to buy it. Well, no, I've actually gotten so much use out of it already. It's already
I
paid
think
for
it's
itself.
75% off right now at Plugin BP.
This thing is magical. It will give you extra volume perception without really bumping your head up against the
Yeah.
without creating like distortion issues with clipping and stuff. It's so good. And
Yeah.
then finally, and I know a ton of people use this because it's free, at least the Elements version is,
Yeah.
Ozone 9. It's just a great way to get your volume, again, like we talk about wanting to get it loud enough so it's going to compete with the other tracks but not too loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just bump down your threshold here. I don't even use so many parameters in this thing. I don't use the imaging. I use the equalizer a little
Yeah.
bit here, but mostly it's just a limiter to get, well, I guess
Yeah.
they officially call it a maximizer, but just get the volume loud. So that's my two bus. And I do I think it's such a time saver to do top down mixing, because then it's not some surprise when you try to add we're all mastering our own stuff. We're not sending this away to some music house to be mastered.
That's
So
yeah,
some
and
some
that's
some
that's the
engineer.
thing. People
Yeah.
ask me all the time, like, what about the mixing and mastering stage? And I always
Right.
explain, folks, there is no such thing in our business.
Right.
Like,
You got to do
we
it
don't mix
yourself.
and master. This is not like a song that you record, then you mix it, then you take it to a mastering engineer. Every composer that is asked to create a track for a commercial is his own mixing engineer.
Yep.
Like, so everybody is capable in our business of making their stuff sound polished, loud, and crisp and jumping out of the speaker. Will there be a mix? Yeah, there will be a mix, but it'll be a broadcast mix. So they're not going to just worry about how your song sounds,
Right.
like all the different stems and splits and layers in your track. What the mixing engineer for broadcast mix is going to worry about is how your song fits into the voiceover, fits into the sound design, and fits to the broadcast specifications. And so they don't want to have to worry about your badly mixed track. So your track should already sound great. Of course, they might touch it up a bit, they might enhance it. For instance, what I like to do is when I work on a campaign and I have the ability to export the splits and run them through some expensive analog hardware in the studio, we're going to do that. If we have the time, we're going to do that. If we have the means, we're going to do that.
Yeah.
But if your track is not already full of life and vigor and energy,
It's not
I'm
going to
not even
save
going to
it.
get excited about it in the first place. You know what I'm saying? So what I want to do is take a great track and just maximize its greatness.
Yep.
Okay. And when I hear a good track versus a great track and I have 2 days to deliver a track, well, guess what? Good track is gone. Great
Hmm.
track. Here we go. So
Yeah.
really you got to work on those skills and be self-reliant. And today we have the tools to be self-reliant. Like
Oh my
you have
gosh, more than
tools that are
ever.
better than what Dave Pensato had. You have
Literally.
tool, like
Yeah.
all these guys even say it, like all these analog guys who are now mixing inside of the box will tell you, like, it's not
Yep.
about the tools per se, it's what you do with them.
Train your
But
ears. Yep.
there's definitely nobody saying you cannot mix in the box. Like nobody's
Nope.
serious is saying that.
Nobody's serious. No.
Nobody serious is saying that. So you have the tools and you can make it happen. Okay, so you had the drums.
Yeah, I would say
Really
another
good
early
drums.
early
Yeah,
thing was the bass guitar, and I was like, this is a vintage track. I've got a bass guitar in my studio. I know how to play bass. I'm gonna try to do it on my own. So I just played. It's nothing fancy. It's nothing crazy, but I've got um
is that the second thing you recorded after the bass, after the drums?
yeah, it was. Yep.
Okay.
Just to keep that energy going, and that's how the track actually begins. It's here. When the little coin goes in, and so
Yeah,
I had that, and they eventually they thought that wasn't quite enough, so I do this little like echo, like this vocal thing with delay, just to give it a little more ear candy before the
yeah,
the
yeah.
beat kicks in. But yeah, the bass was definitely early, and I just
And that's a note again to you guys. A lesson to be learned here is a lot of times I will hear in your tracks that you have really low frequency stuff that plays a major role. And
mhm,
just remember that we might be listening on monitors, we might be listening on great headphones, but the client will listen on a laptop in a conference room. They might not
mhm.
even hear your bass line. So if you think your bass line is the perfect opening, the client might not even register it at all. And
Yep.
that's why it's important to keep high frequency things in the register that are important. So if your intro is important, make sure you have something in the upper frequency spectrum because the client might be listening and they probably won't listen on a MacBook 16-inch stereo speaker. They're going to listen on an
Yeah.
old IBM laptop with a mono speaker. So it's very important.
Yeah, and even just the bass, you'll notice I put this little radiator, which is just a ton of old school saturation on it, and that really, if you listen to it without it, it definitely brings life into the, it just
Yeah,
makes it
it
sound a
definitely
little
does.
hotter.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So you got the bass now. You laid the bass down, but so you already knew what your progression is going to be melodically through the track?
um, I kind of felt that out. I think I built up the drums, and then I started doing this piano stuff.
Yep.
Um, so you see, you got bass and piano here. So yeah, it's again, I mean,
Yep.
it's very simple. I hardly changed chords here. I stay in the same key, with some variation, but staying on the same, you know,
Yep.
um,
Yep.
so kind of home base until really the end. And it's
Yep.
just very, very simple chord wise. It's all about feeling, and so
Yep.
just adding stuff. I've got yeah. Chalk is is bass and drums, and the piano that I knew that they wanted. And after that, I started. I think I usually do vocals pretty early because I mean that's
That's
obviously
your
essential
backbone. Yeah.
part of this. So I start building in vocals. And after that, I don't think there were any trumpets or horns at all in the reference track. But again, liking Motown, liking Amy Winehouse, liking the Temptations or whatever, I added these in. And it's just adding a little bit of energy there.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah.
And what do you tell me how you recorded your bass and your vocals? Like, do you go through some kind of a preamp or do you go straight into your sound card?
Straight into the box with
Okay.
vocals
And you
and
got
and
to focus
everything.
right? You got to,
Focusrite Claret, yeah.
yep.
It's got a nice little. There's a button that you can enable. It's called Air, and it's just a little extra lift on some of the higher frequencies that
Yeah.
just it always sounds good. It's kind of like there's no reason to not have it on.
And it's the same for your vocals. You,
Yep, same for vocals. Yep, I
what
have an
mic are you using? Yeah.
AKG C214. It's about a $400 mic, and it's a one sided, and it just um, yeah, it has a lot of character. It's I would say probably not. It's not a mic that people use for modern music, but it's what I use for everything because with EQ and stuff, I kind of fix it the way I want it. And
Do you do anything on the way in as far as plugins, or do you
I
fix that later?
Oh, you mean after
Like when
the
you're
signal
recording
is in the
vocals?
box?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do
on
you,
the
yeah.
vocals, and maybe now would be a good time to talk about gain staging. I really do believe that that's important to make sure all the levels are equal. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know if if everyone knows this or not by now, but any plugins are meant to really shine when the frequency or when the volume of any given signal is at a certain level. So you'll see um, this is Klanghelm. Klanghelm makes a really cheap plugin called VUMT, and it's just it's a VU meter to see exactly where the volume is, and so you can solo your vocal. And right now you can see it's calibrated to a negative 18 dB. Now, for some people, it's like, oh, I don't want it to be that quiet, but you do want every track to be quiet because when you sum them all together, and then when you're adding compression on individually, and then on the mix bus, on the two bus, everything gets so loud that you really want to have things right around this -8. Some people mix it in -12, but anyway, so I'm walking down the street alone, you see, it's like if I don't have as long as your needle is getting close to that red, when I sing loud, it'll go over.
Yeah.
But basically, you're calibrated to -18, and then you want your needle to average being, you definitely want to see the needle moving, and you definitely don't want it to be like redlining over here. So you want it to be kind of like moving
But this
around your
is
needle.
like when you're recording the vocal, or do you slap this on after you have
No,
recorded?
this is after,
Okay.
during the
Yeah.
recording process, I do have I have a little meter on the focus, right, that shows, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're getting close, you're orange, you're red. But as long as I'm in the green, with digital recording nowadays, it's not something we need to worry about because we have the infinite headroom thing.
Yeah.
So once you record and you don't have any clipping in the actual track, I just do this gain stage. It's always my first plugin that I put on every single track. Vocal, drums, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it's a sample, doesn't matter if it's MIDI, always gain stage because it's just gonna make your job way easier afterwards.
So
So
this thing is essentially what? Just like a meter,
it's
or does it
it's just,
actually?
all it is a VU meter. Yep, and
Okay.
that you can calibrate to a certain volume, and then
Oh,
it's
I
very
see. Okay.
easy to play and make sure that it's hitting right around zero. I
Yeah.
know when I played just now, it looked like it was low, but after tweaking all through the track, that's kind of what I honed in on as
Yeah.
the correct
Yeah.
average volume.
Yeah.
So
So are
so
you
that
mixing as you go along, basically?
yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So
After
yeah, you don't separate it into like dedicated phases, but you're
I
massaging
don't
it as you're going.
Exactly, yeah. Here's the virtual mix racks from Slade is what I use on my main vocal here. I've got the classic tubes mic, just this real sweet sounding mic. It gave it a warm vintage sound. Then I've got the preamp to drive it a little bit. I've got the compressor, the vintage compressor, and then I've got this plugin here. It's called custom EQ. It does kind of remind me of the Pultec EQ that I had on my master bus that we were talking about earlier because it
Yeah.
just adds really silky, nice highs, and it adds really punchy lows. So I don't have any low on it because I guess I already had enough, but I wanted a little more crispiness, so I added that.
Yeah.
And that's probably the main thing affecting the sound of the vocal. I would say is that mix rack. Then I've got I forgot that I had this on here. Yeah, I've got this Plugin Alliance male vocal pushed, and keep in mind, I I cranked out the first version of this track definitely within 3 hours, and so I'm just run and gun whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, does it sound good? Okay, keep it. Like I'm not even. That's why I don't even
Yeah.
remember some of this stuff because I'm just like, what's going to get it to sound good?
And that's the way it
um,
is. Like honestly, when you're working on a track in these for these ad campaigns, it's a bit of a mess. Like you're really
yep,
working fast
totally.
and instinctively, and That's why it's very, very important. This is a major point. Save versions of your sessions
Yeah.
because you cannot trust yourself to remember what happened. So, if, for instance, you have this track, you sent it forward, and now they want to change, you need to make a separate session out of this. Like, you need to save as. Because if they say, we actually don't like it, we want to go back to where you were, you have no idea because you were working so fast. You have no idea what made it
Yep.
sound the way it made
Yep.
it sound, you know. So it's very important to save your sessions properly.
Yep.
Did you want to say something else about the vocals?
I'm just going to go through here really quick. This is a plugin that kind of gives it a garbly little octavey feel, which gave it a nice retro sound. This is a stock plugin from Cubase. It's called Quadra-Fuzz. It adds some distortion on some different bands, which gives it an old school feel. Again, everything is about the vibe, about the old school vibe. This repeater, I've got it given some
So you
delay.
really stacked a lot of stuff on your vocal.
Yeah, and again, this is just reflexive stuff that I've learned from mixing a million of my own tracks over the years, and then I've got some reverb on here too. So I was not thinking hard about any of these decisions. I just was like, boom, what does it need? Boom, what does it need? Boom.
Yeah.
I'm listening solo, but as you'll find in a lot of tutorials, don't solo every track because it doesn't sound the same solo as it's going to sound in the.
No.
So always go back to your main mix and listen to the bass in the context of the whole mix and say, can I even hear the bass? Is the bass way too loud? Is it standing out enough? So I'm doing that constantly. I'm just like play, stop, add this thing.
Yeah.
So I've got that's and again, I probably did spend a little extra time on the main vocal because that's at the end of the day, that's what they're hiring me for. They want a track with vocals. If that's not what they wanted, I may not have gotten called for this, but they wanted a
Yeah.
baritone vocalist. So I probably did spend a little extra time really sweetening this because I was like, this is what I'm here for. I kind of copied and pasted as far as like some harmonies here and that little the little delay thing. Is that going on?
Yep.
So I've color coded my what I would I guess call my background vocals as yellow. So those are just a little more later on in the track, and those are simpler. I don't have as much stacked on there. They're just like the gain staging, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah.
Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about as far as the important parts of creating this track? And then I wanted to ask you a couple of last questions, and then I think we should wrap up.
Yeah, let me see if I can do this. I'm gonna play the track, and I'm gonna start in stereo here, but then I'm gonna collapse it down to mono for a second, and I'm gonna show you the difference really quick here.
Yep.
Okay, mono, stereo, mono, stereo. And so the only reason I do that is to let people know it's really, really important to have a mix that still sounds good in mono. And the reason it's easy to forget that is because so many people are listening in headphones or earbuds. But it's very possible for a track to sound good width wise and to sound really crappy when it's broken down to mono. And just to make a long story short, if you're able to, so what I do say, and I think what happened in this project was that my horns sounded really good, and then I hit the mono button. And in I don't know, for other DAWs, but in Cubase, there's just this like mix console thing here. You can hit stereo, and it turns to mono. And I switched everything to mono, and all of a sudden the horns disappeared. So what I did is I went in with some mid side compression, and I did, or I actually probably fixed that on the master bus with this, but I took, right here, this plugin is only lifting the mid frequency. It's lifting that so that you can hear stuff in mono. And I just want to let people know, like, that's been one of the game changers for me in my mixes is making sure, even with all your cool, fun with enhancing plugins, even the free one that Isotope makes, have fun with that stuff. But if you're able to still keep energy and every instrument and vocal and everything audible in mono, your mix, I guarantee, 100% will always sound better. So
And
that's
the
just one
thing
thing I
is,
want to
when
say.
your track goes forward in the process and there's a broadcast mix happening, we always check in mono. So
That's really good to know. I didn't know that.
if your track
Wow.
relies on stereo as a concept, you
Yeah.
got to work on that.
Yep.
You really got to
Yep.
work on that.
Well, and
Uh,
think about the fact that even on a smartphone, I mean, yeah, it's got two speakers, but they're like less than an inch apart. So
yeah,
anyone listening to anything that you do on a smartphone is basically listening in mono anyway. So, and
that's right.
that's going to get messed up if it doesn't sound good in mono. So,
Yeah,
yeah, just a very simple, not a fancy plugin. It's all about breaking it down to mono and saying like, okay, does it really sound good? And what you'll find a lot of times is that it actually doesn't sound very good in mono, and then you go in and you fix stuff
yeah,
so that it does. And then you listen to your mix, in stereo again, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's amazing
yeah.
because it has like foundation, like the
That's
kick
right.
and the vocal are like they're at the center,
That's right.
and all the other extra stuff is on the side. So yeah,
Okay, well, let's do some more rapid fire stuff. I just want to
okay.
ask you, like, basically, how long did it take you to make the original demo? And how long did you have?
Um, I actually had a few days, but I just really wanted to impress them, so I got it done. Um, I got it done in, yeah, 3 or 4 hours for sure. But that was before I added the synth stuff. So I did drums, bass, all the vocals, and then some horns along with piano, and I sent it off, and that took me from 3 to 4 hours for sure. Probably, I would say writing included, with my
And you
writing
sent
the
it that day, like, or the next day, basically?
that day, but they're in France, so I sent it probably midnight their time, at the end of my day, and then they got
Okay.
it the next morning.
Were you nervous about it?
um I was expectant. I was hopeful. I was actually really proud of the track, and I thought it had a chance. And thankfully, and um, this is just I'm very thankful for the fact that the producer was really awesome to work with. He was very um, just kind, just very like every time he would make a suggestion, he would kind of say like, hey, how would you feel if we did this? And I mean, I just took it as like, hey, you're the boss. I mean, I want to do what you want. But he was very very polite and very good to work with, and very very good at communicating. I had a lot of clarifying questions again from the master class. Like anytime I didn't understand something, I was like, oh wait, do you want it to start at the second 15 or second 17 or whatever? And he was really great to work with. So it was a good experience overall
So
as
you,
far as
you
that
felt
goes.
confident, and then, but still, there's a bit of nervousness, like what's going to happen. So, what was the first
Yeah.
response to your track?
He said, "Hey, we like this, but just to summarize, he was like, "Hey, let's add stuff. Let's make it faster. Let's add some synths." And right up until the very end, they actually had me like keeping the drive of this track all the way through, where it just kind of fades out on this big the do 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 like the snares are going like that, and then right at the last minute, they actually had me do this like and then sort of like a fade out, like a musical
Oh,
fade
okay.
out,
Yeah.
a natural one instead of like a high energy and then just like volume fade. So
Yeah.
I
Okay.
thought that was kind of interesting. He actually had the producer had me redo all of the vocals with more energy, even
Wow.
though
That's a big one.
that didn't really it didn't really reflect the reference track, but he just wanted to see what it sounded like, and so I really put more like da 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 da. And he was like, "Hey, thanks for doing that, but I think I like the way it was before better." We definitely did some comping with the vocals, where he kept a couple of those high energy sections, but he had me leave the rest because, again, if you listen to the reference, I mean, it's kind of like dude, it's kind of chill. It's like high energy but chill. It's hard to describe it. We'll drop the link below. But it's this weird combination of like a high tempo, but like I'm kind of like I'm kind of just like vibing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's what I did for my first take, and that's kind of what he ended up liking for most of it.
So then, how long did
Um,
that whole revision process take, and when did you feel like
Probably,
it's getting to a final?
I'd say we spent about 3 or 4 days on revisions before they sent it off. Yeah,
And
and
then And then what happened when you sent it off? Were there any surprises or?
I sent it off. He said that the producer told me that he liked it, which, again, is a nice thing to say. Yeah, I mean, he said that he recommended my track to the creative team,
Yep.
and so I was very happy to hear that he was proud of the work that we had done, and then it took about a week and a half, and of course that's when the nervousness and kind of like the crippling self doubt started to set in, because
Yeah.
I'm like, every day that goes by, you're like, okay, I get it, and keep in mind, I've already been ghosted by a different producer from a different team, back in July, where I worked really hard on this track and I just literally never heard back. Like I still haven't heard back. And that's kind of a punch in the gut because you want to at least hear a no. Like no
Yeah.
is better than nothing, wondering. So
Yeah.
so
And
I check it. I
it's
check
the unfortunate part of our business, you know? And it's something
yeah,
that
yeah,
you need to learn as a craftsperson, that it's not a reflection on your ability or anything like
exactly.
that. Like it's got nothing to do with your ability. So you just need to um, work on the mindset and never allow yourself to convince yourself of something unless the facts, listen to the facts. So like there's
Right.
no answer. Don't try to dramatize. Don't try to make up stuff. They're probably
Yeah.
going through the approval process, many different levels.
Yep.
But the fact is, you were
But
competing against other tracks, right?
I was, obviously there's no way of me knowing, but just to again kind of compliment this guy, he every time I sent an email saying like, hey, what's going on, like he would reply, and he'd say like, hey, we haven't heard back yet. And I tried not to be annoying, obviously I don't want to be sending emails every day, but finally after a couple weeks, he said, hey, I have good news for you. The team said it was a tough decision, but they chose your track. And
Wow.
I called my wife, and we got our bottle of wine. And I mean, that was, but we still had revisions after that. We still made some little changes, but that email was like the money shot. I was like,
Yeah,
I can do this. I'm part of this world now. That was so validating to get to say like, hey, they like it. You're gonna get the big payday, and
yeah,
you're going to your music is going to be playing on terrestrial TV in Paris. I was like pretty
that's
stoked about that.
amazing. Yeah, and
Yeah,
online there's a sort of habit to talk very transparently about budgets and things like that. But the reason why we don't do that in our world is because it's really not up to us to disclose budgets. We don't know if the brand wants this kind of information out there. We don't know if the music production company wants this kind of information out there. So, if this was like independent work, like where we were not really codependent on other people in the process, yeah, it'd be easy to reveal and talk about it. But
yeah.
just so if you're wondering, it's not a small amount of money. That's not
Well,
why
let
we're
me
hiding it. It's a
let me
significant amount
say
of money.
this: it's the amount of money, the pay between the rights and the composer fee for this one is almost enough for me to pay the rent for my apartment for an entire year.
Yeah.
that
So there
that
you
should
go.
that should give some perspective. I've been
Yeah.
like, it got me very excited.
Yeah.
I
So
mean, to the point where it was such a large amount, and they told me at the beginning how much it was, and I was right. My first reaction is like, well, no, that's not gonna. That
yeah, I
I can't
even said
imagine
that
that
because I
being
remember you
reimbursed.
talking to me and I was like, really?
Right.
That's how much they're paying?
Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
just
But
I
just
mean,
just keep in mind that yeah, figures are not discussed specifically in this business for this reason. It's a privacy thing. The brand doesn't
yeah,
want their budgets disclosed. The music, so just
yeah,
be aware that if you're a craftsperson who's doing remarkable music, the paydays can be significant in our
yeah,
business. And
yeah,
Lewis, a few months after graduating from our master class, of course, going through some pain first of rejection, silence, not hearing from people, actually doing work for them and not hearing from them. This kind of stuff happens, folks. And
mhm,
you just have to learn how to grow a thick skin and persevere. Keep improving your craft and keep doing the right things, and something will happen. So yeah, bottle of wine, happy ending. At the end of it, I mean, you're talking about how much work. we're talking about 2 weeks or so,
Yeah, about 2 weeks, and
but
yeah,
not full
obviously a lot.
days in the studio.
No, I mean, if I had to break it down into hours, I would say I only spent about maybe 10 hours on this thing. When I
Ten
think about some of the
hours. Oh my
when I
God.
think about some of
It's
the
like,
tracks I've worked on for myself, I've spent way hundreds of hours on
yeah,
my own
yeah.
albums, on my own
The
tracks.
deadline
But
helps.
it does, but the other thing too to keep in mind that we just discussed earlier is all that work that I spent on my 52 songs in a week, on the
Yes.
albums I've done, on the
That's
failed
what allows you
tracks.
to work quickly now.
That's why I can go in confidently without second guessing myself and saying like, listen to the reference, go in the box, just do everything like it's second nature
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah.
It's like you're not having to think. And to the credit of the production company, they sent me a track that they knew I could win on. They didn't send
Yeah.
me some random trap track that there's like way out of my wheelhouse, but they sent me something that
Yeah.
was like in my genre, and so they gave me an opportunity to succeed.
Yeah. And that's a wonderful cooperation, collaboration. And guess what, folks? This is not like a one shot win. This
Right.
project is now enriched the relationship between Lewis and the music producer,
Yep.
and so it's natural to expect that this relationship is going to continue and that this project, well done, really invested into the relationship, and so that relationship should keep on giving in the future when there is other projects and things like this. So that's a very important point.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, this is a great story. 10 hours of work, a year's worth of rent
it's
paid.
it's
I mean,
unreal,
it's
man.
unreal.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Um, so
yeah.
congrats, man. Really, really, really love the fact that you got this because, some of my better students in the master class, I really wish success for them because it's like, I want to prove also selfishly that what I'm laying down in the master class is going to work if you follow the damn thing.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
it's not going to be easy, but like, if you stick to the process and you just listen and you just do the work, reality will bring you stuff. Just like in your case, I'm really, really thankful that that this happened for you, because it's a validation for you. It's a validation for us as an academy also. And I hope that what you've heard today has been helpful to you folks. I'm sorry about some of the technical issues. We're
Yeah,
trying
me
to
too.
figure out how to route Cubase out of Zoom through Windows, whatever. Guys, link is going to be below to the track that Lewis did, so you can listen to it carefully. You've seen some of the plugins and some of the ways that Lewis goes about creating the track. So, yeah, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you doing this, Lewis.
Of course, and I just want to say to anyone watching this, but especially people that are in the master class. I mean, like I've started re-listening to the master class almost like a podcast, just like positive affirmation, and I've come back to so many different things that you say in different modules, and it's like some of them are like, oh yeah, I forgot that, but a lot of this stuff is like I've just by rewatching them the first time so many times and like putting it into practice, I've realized this has become a lifestyle for me. And
You know,
so anyone who's already purchased the masterclass, watch it again. I mean, make it like put it on in your car when you're driving somewhere, because like there's so many little nuggets in there, not just about production, but about the way the industry works and what to expect and how hard you need to work. That it's just like having a motivational speaker with you all the time. I mean, and we need that, right? Because for those weeks
need
and
that.
months that go by where we aren't getting demos sent to us,
Yeah,
what do? Keep
yeah,
telling yourself what you need to do. And for me, there's really no better way of doing that than re-listening to some of the module, listening to your story, listening to case studies, listening to Naren talk about, making a Converse ad. I mean, it's just,
yeah,
there's a gold mine in there. And so
yeah.
people need
Yeah.
to, if they're not in the class, they need to get in it. And if they are in, take full advantage of it and listen to it multiple times.
Yeah. Or just keep watching for this YouTube channel. We're gonna keep
That
putting
too.
out informational stuff. Stay on the email list. For all of
Yeah.
those of you who can't get into it, can't afford it for whatever reason, we're going to try to provide you value as well. But obviously, I've designed this thing to be self-sufficient. Like, in my conscience, when I finish that thing, I'm looking at the 7 modules, 40 hours of content, and I'm like, is there anything missing here? No, I don't think so. So,
Yeah,
so in
definitely.
fact, I just want to, reiterate that Lewis is an example of somebody who started this year. He went through some pain after graduating of people not replying, but he didn't give up. He persevered. He didn't change his ways either. He didn't say, oh, this doesn't work, so I'm going to move on. No, he just stuck to doing the essentials. Like, it works. You just need to persist. And so I'm really happy for your success. I hope there's more success on the way for you. And guys, if you have any questions after having listened to this, please put them below. Lewis might check out the comment section, and if not, I'll forward him some questions, and we'll try to help you out. Whatever questions, technical questions you might have, or questions about writing songs or scores or sounds for these campaigns. And once again, thanks a lot, Lewis. Hope everybody's safe and well, and we'll see you in the next video. Ciao.